Welcome to the Tax Consulting South Africa podcast. My name is Richan Schwellnus, and I am a tax attorney in our tax legal team. And I'm joined today by my colleague and our tax team compliance and processing manager, Nicolas Botha.
Thanks, Richan. Glad we could chat about this. I think it's quite a critical topic for our expats.
Absolutely. Yeah, as in our practice, we're seeing more and more South Africans choosing to return home after a period abroad. One key factor is certain SARS is watching, and SARS can be waiting for them upon their return.
No, certainly. I mean, in experience now with submitting the tax returns, a lot of those who've previously confirmed of no intention to come back to South Africa has had things change, whether it be retirement benefits or just wanting to come back home. Definitely seeing a lot more expats coming in.
Right.
And I think, unfortunately, that's nice for SARS as well. And potentially wanting to get their piece of the pie and asking, why have you returned? Either if you've said nothing at all to them or if you've actually formally immigrated already. So critical for them to get their affairs in order.
Right. Yeah, fully agreed. And on that note, in fact, in recent times, we saw a new kind of notice being issued by SARS, framed in a rather vague fashion, but seemingly probing into the reasons why an expat had elected to return to South Africa. What are your thoughts on that article? Is it perhaps teeing that expat up for a further audit based on the disclosures they make?
Yeah, no, I think you brought that across my desk a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
And I think my immediate thought to you was intentional vagueness.
Yes.
Behind why is SARS asking such what seems to be an easy answer, simple question.
Yes.
But if answered wrong, could get the expat in serious trouble. And that's just a basic question about why are you returning, and if the expat answers that incorrectly and you go on formal record through that verification or audit process and make a disclosure, that's huge potential repercussions, especially in terms of a risk on taxation on your historic earnings, And so for me, critical item is did that person formally immigrate?
Right.
And get those affairs in order? And now that they're returning, do they have a narrative behind why they're returning? Because obviously if you formally exit, and you're signing a declaration that says, I'm not coming to South Africa, or not returning rather to South Africa on a permanent basis.
Right.
And now you have. And SARS are going to ask you, did you do that legitimately?
Right.
Or what's going on here? Because that's potentially 10 years of historic earnings that could have been taxable.
Right. Yeah, fully agreed. Now, what we are also seeing more and more is expats that underwent the so-called financial immigration process under the old system or the old regime with the South African Reserve Bank, and they then resided abroad for many years. And they've now elected to return to South Africa, and they are currently at least still reflected and recorded by SARS as being normal resident taxpayers. In your experience, what is sort of the interplay and the link between people that did do a financial immigration many years ago and they come back and they find that their tax affairs are not fully compliant or up to date per se?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, for me, that was quite a critical turn and event in it. For me, it was the Great Reset. Whether or not you did the old process, SARS now had on your registered details that you are SA tax resident.
Right.
So during that period when that reset came in, we definitely contacted all our previous clients that we assisted with the old, what we call the old regime, to make sure that they did do the new updated. So unfortunately, SARS did shift the goalposts for us.
Right.
And very critical that you align to those new goalposts and got that non-res letter, which is now kind of the set standard. So
Right.
because of that, if you don't have that in place, you're still at risk. So important that keep your old documents. You've got the MP336B form at that time. You possibly got your immigration clearance. those are all good motivational factors to just add into your new application to say, hey guys, you did this before, you reset me, and just make sure that you mitigate that risk, especially in terms of coming back.
Yeah.
Because coming back now, you want all your ducks in a row before you make that return and now make this new statement
Right.
to recommence your residency.
And invariably when expats return, the view that they adopt a head in the sand approach and take no active steps is not advisable naturally. Presumably they would open a bank account again in South Africa. There might be transactions moving in and out of that account. They might be earning some interest in that account. And at some point or other, SARS will become aware that there is a presence for this expat back in South Africa. And at that point, they might then find themselves subject to an audit. So, and I'm sure in your practice as well, it's highly recommended that expats adopt a proactive approach, rather ensure that historic affairs were fully compliant. Even if you did the old financial immigration process with the South African Reserve Bank, regularize that first with SARS directly, obtain that golden ticket, that notice of non-resident tax status letter first. And then from there, they can move into a seamless residency recommencement process.
Certainly. I mean, for me, we can never adopt the head in the sand process.
Yeah.
It's critical for expats that are being focused on. It is just the nature of SARS that they are focusing on expats. Foreign money and foreign or taxation on foreign earnings is quite lucrative.
Yes.
So the first question they're going to ask is, when you're bringing this money into the country, where did it come from? How are they going to check that? They're going to go look at your tax profile and see, oh, what did you declare?
Right.
And now immediately you're going to show that you've brought in this money into the country, you've made no declarations, and then on their form, it says to them that you're a tax resident.
Right.
And that immediately triggers a whole bunch of red flags. Is that, one, you're a tax resident. So two, where you haven't declared this income. And three, where did the money come from? And they will, in my opinion, and from previous studies, show that they will go for the harshest punishment,
Right.
And that harshest punishment is potentially, a 200% penalty on the liability.
Sure.
And what I have seen is that SARS will not consider any exemptions. And the reason they don't consider any exemptions or tax credits foreignly is that the law clearly states that an exemption is only given where claimed.
Right.
So I've seen that SARS will automatically check that bank account, see that balance, and add it into the tax return as a fully taxable amount.
Right.
And that now puts you on a severe backstep, because instead of now being upfront and forward with SARS and going, okay, this is what I've done, this is why I haven't been taxable, now they're saying you're taxable and you have to disprove their argument.
Yes.
And obviously disproving an argument is much more difficult than just being upfront and compliant and showing your case.
Right. Certainly, yeah. And then in your experience, of course, we're seeing many so-called push factors for expats residing abroad. In recent times, with Trump being elected, there's a bit of turmoil in Europe. Of course, the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war, conflicts in the Middle East, all of these various factors are raising concerns with South African expats that have been abroad, in some cases for decades. Many of them are reaching out and exploring a possible return to South Africa, or have actually returned to the country already. Now, in your experience, have you seen any compelling reasons that would be accepted by SARS as part of that robust narrative that you mentioned?
No, certainly. I mean, it's all leads down to your ordinarily residence test, And that test is in simplistic terms asking whether you're going to remain abroad permanently or return to South Africa. If you remain abroad permanently and that's your statement, you can stay there and cease your residency. But if you're coming back to South Africa and returning, then you can't cease residency because you remain ordinarily residents. Now, that is all about an intention factor. And obviously intention can change. I mean, today I intend to go to the US. You know, the next year, elections happen, something changes, and now US isn't suitable for me. And now my plan is to go to Europe. It's just human nature.
Yes.
But obviously, from a law perspective, we need to make sure that there's objective proof proving that intention.
Yes.
So initially, when you do immigrate and you are going on a permanent basis, a good factor is to do the actual application itself, because it's a lengthy application. You're potentially paying exit tax. That in itself is a good motivational factor, is going through all this red tape and rigmarole. So very important to have that element closed off nice and neatly. And then your example is perfect. I've, funny enough, had a client that was living in the Ukraine. They went on holiday to I think it was France or somewhere. And during that time, their house was destroyed as part of the war. And now you're stuck in a country that you don't know, you're on holiday, and automatically you're going to go back home. You know, you've kind of lost everything, all that you've built and set up abroad, and come back to South Africa and reestablish yourself. For us, beautiful narrative, very easy, you know, but obviously tough circumstance.
Yes.
Another example for me is the Middle East. Often, most of the majority of our clients actually go to the Middle East. A lot of opportunity there, a lot of benefits in terms of no income tax country. And the UAE, for example, doesn't typically give any residency permits. So oftentimes they're just reliant on a work permit.
Yes.
And if you lose your work permit, or you lose your employment, you lose your permit. You have to leave the country.
Yes.
That's a very nice narrative for me, because obviously you're there on a permanent employment contract, and you've got this justification behind why you're there. You're building a life and possibly going to immigrate to somewhere thereafter. You know, so that's a nice factor to have, that something happened with the employment, it got terminated, and you return to South Africa. And then a more common one that we're seeing now, I think, is retirement in South Africa.
Yes.
So one of my clients mentioned to me, I can either live abroad as a pauper, or retire with my foreign money as a king in South Africa.
Yes.
You know, so I think it's a lot of our dreams to retire a nice beach house in Cape Town.
Yes.
And very appetizing. But obviously you then have to show the intention factor around that.
Yes.
Because if SARS can prove that that was your long-term goal, you're in trouble.
Yes.
Whereas if it just by happenstance, you then got to that age, your mind shift changed, you know, and you can prove that it was more economically beneficial to retire in South Africa, we have to build that narrative.
Yeah.
But I mean, you more the legal side than me. So you know that intricacy behind the right wording and the right detail to support that. And that's why we picked up that vagueness that you want to avoid, and you want to make a clear definition behind it. Today, or when I left, my intention was X. I stayed abroad with that intention, and then something happened, and we need that critical turning event for an expat to substantially prove and do that recommencement correctly, so that we don't place risk on that historic income.
Yeah, spot on. And building on what you mentioned earlier, that burden of proof, a compelling argument that SARS, I mean, how can SARS dispute it, is if you have a supporting document to demonstrate and support and evidence your averment. So in the case of this recent trend of Emiratization and Saudiization, as they call it, many foreign nationals, not just South Africans, are losing their employment and their jobs in the Middle East. And as you've correctly said, you know, they're then forced to leave the country. They don't have legal status there. If they don't, they will be deported. And I mean, a formal termination notice from an employer, often in the Middle East, they will also issue a visa cancellation notice as well. Utilizing those supporting documents as part of this narrative is a very robust way of preparing yourself for that potential SARS query and verification from what we've seen. So the importance of ensuring that you have documentary evidence or proof available cannot be understated. Yeah.
No, fully agree with you there. And it's a surprising trend. I think the initial trend was a lot more remote working and everyone opening up the borders and getting expats to expand their knowledge, where, like you say, there's various countries now, Saudi, UAE, Netherlands, even, you know, their change in politics. I mean, I was there last year because there was such a drive for expats by Netherlands, and then their new government came in, and then the government is very much now focusing on Dutch nationalism and making sure their people are looked after first. So we've gone a bit more polar opposites, it seems. And I mean, that's a good narrative. You just need to justify it properly and say that, well, I went to Netherlands because they promised it was a great expatriate country.
Yes.
I got there, the government changed, and now they don't like me because I'm not Dutch.
Yes.
You know, so very, very important to just show that onus of proof.
Yeah.
When making the application. And just getting it done right. I think that's the important part, getting a bit of a helping hand, perhaps, and getting that expert advisory so that you don't lend yourself up in these troubled waters.
Fully agreed. Yeah. Well, thank you for your insights today, Nick, and your time. And to our listeners, if you found this interesting and relevant, please do like and share and subscribe and share this with your friends. Until next time.